Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Tradie Business School podcast, the only podcast you'll need to grow and scale your trades-based business and become a better human in general. Today, I am joined by the lovely Ashlee Collins. She is an amazing woman, and she's on the podcast today because we decided to, instead of just celebrate International Women's Day, we're going to turn it into International Women's Month. I've known Ashlee for what feels like my whole life now. I think we've worked together in various shapes and forms for it's got to be 20 years or so, or getting pretty close to it.
Getting there.
But the reason I got her on the show is because I've worked with her in a professional capacity. She's become a very dear friend, one of my best friends. And she just has such an incredible story, and all the things that she's done we'll share throughout the show. And I just want to, I guess, help those younger women out there that are getting into very male-dominated industries, because this is the thing. Ashlee has just immersed herself from day one. So first and foremost, Ash, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. I love your background. It's very quintessential tradie office. For those of you who are listening only, please find the video online and check out Ashlee's office. She's got stuff everywhere. So
if only you could see my desk as well. It's very authentic at the moment.
Yeah. So and quintessential tradie. You're the quintessential tradie wife as well. You're in amongst everything. And I think your journey sort of speaks for itself. Like, your dad's got his own civil business and you were in and sort of involved with that. And I'll just give the highlight reel for the listeners and people watching at home. So when I first met Ashlee, she was working for a company that services projects nationally. And I think from memory, you were also traveling a bit with some of those projects, working on site remotely, those sorts of things. Then you transitioned into what was a multinational company that was acquiring other companies that then also ended up getting swallowed up by another massive multinational company and all the rigmarole that goes with that. And at the same time as all that was happening, you managed to start your own business in the healthcare space, one of your passions. And then, obviously on that journey, I forgot to mention you met the love of your life, the father of your two beautiful boys now. And, he's gone and started a business and you're helping him run that as well. So that's kind of the highlight reel of your crazy life. But Let's go back to the start, right at the start. And what made you get into the construction industry? Was it because your dad had his business? And this is the thing, a lot of the ladies I talk to, they found themselves in very male-dominated industries. And the construction industry is like quintessential blokey bloke. You're such a dainty, petite woman who, really looks after herself and that sort of thing. And you just find yourself in amongst all these burly blokes. And your partner, the love of your life is no exception to the rule, typical grumpy, civil construction worker. But, take me back to the start. How did you get into it and why?
Yeah, okay, good question. So I didn't actually specifically set out to get into the industry. My dad and his business had no influence on me and my decision to get into the industry. For sure, I have been somewhat involved and interested in what he does and what he has done. He started that right from when I was a teenager. So but yeah, once I finished school, I didn't really know what to do with myself. I actually went and did a certificate in makeup of all things and fluttered around in that for a little while.
This is a trade in itself, right? Makeup, hair and beauty. These are trades. And these are, I often find the funny synergies between the two. I've had bricklayers and hairdressers come together in masterminds and help solve each other problems, which is quite funny. But sorry, carry on. You went and did this hair and beauty thing, beauty course.
Yeah, and with that, I guess my other sideline of work was actually working in the hospitality industry. So, I mean, one wouldn't say that the hospitality industry is male dominated as such, but obviously I was working in the front bar of a hotel. So I was, the clientele was mostly male based. So even from being 18 in that industry, I was having to learn to deal with men
and their bloody embedded misogyny.
Yes, absolutely. And especially when you add alcohol to the mix, it's a very interesting combination.
Yeah. And this is the thing, right? Like blokes out there, we've come a long way, but holy shit, we've got a long way to go. So, make sure you're constantly checking yourself because, young 18-year-old girls don't deserve the shit that you would have copped back in those days.
No, but funny you say that though, is I don't actually recall anything really severe or scary or traumatic that happened to me personally. I don't know whether I was just one of the lucky ones. Maybe it's just my personality and the kind of person that I am. Maybe I just didn't draw that kind of attention to myself.
I think
there was a few, there's a few people.
You can be really scary when you want to be, though. So
I can be a little intimidating, I guess. Maybe little, but don't mess with me.
Yeah, exactly right. She may be. They say good things come in small packages, but when I'm describing Ashlee Collins, I always say, yes, so does explosives. So they come in small packages as well.
That's true. Yeah. No, I guess that's the thing. You got to be confident in yourself and know how to stand up for yourself and know when to reach out to people when you need support. And I was lucky in that I had good managers and we had good security staff and things like that. So if I was having any trouble, I'd just reach out and say, can you sort that person out? He's bothering me.
Yeah.
That rarely happened. Even the regulars would, come and help me out if I needed a hand with someone. But it was a rare thing that it would happen to me. So, getting back on track from a young age, I seemed to land myself into an industry where I was, around a lot of men. I think that's just, I naturally feel comfortable around men.
Yeah.
So I find them easier to approach and talk to. And I think for me, it was just something that I fell into because I felt comfortable. That being said, after a while, that sort of industry wasn't working for me. The shifts sort of weren't great and I was looking for more of a 9 to 5 sort of gig and wanted to save for a house and all that. So went to a recruitment agency and said, look, I don't really care what I do. I just want to, what industry I work for, I just want to do some administrative work. So, she came to me with a job with an engineering firm.
Yep.
And I went and applied and they were happy to hire me. So I just jumped into it. So, they weren't necessarily a civil construction business, but they were a small engineering firm. So that was sort of my little step into that industry.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those complementary businesses to that industry, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. And that's actually where I met you first.
Is it?
Yes.
How was that?
Yes. So you were working for one of our contractors doing survey.
That's right.
Yes, and you actually came in for a meeting with me and my boss.
Wow, that's right. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's got to be 20 years ago.
When we first met. That was a long time.
I was trying to recall before we got on this how long it had been and where it was. But that was kind of such a small snippet. And then obviously it was just through sheer chance that we, kept bumping into each other on other projects. And so, that's cool. Well done. Well done.
I'll pull you up on that.
Yeah. No, thank you for reminding me.
That's right.
Everybody listening's gone, oh my God, what are these doing? Get back on track.
Get back on track. Yeah. So again, with the engineering firm, yes, there was a lot of men in, not just in our workplace, but a lot of men that I had to deal with in the industry.
Yeah, I would have been one of those pain in the asses back in the day. I've got no doubt.
Actually, no, you weren't so bad.
No, I think we provided a lot of help. So that was probably where we were. Where I won your friendship, I guess.
You did. Whenever I was in a bit of strife, and the client was like, "I need this ASAP," I'm like, "I need you," and you would always come through. So yes,
beautiful.
No, you're a big help.
Note for anybody that's on the fence about using my services, Ashlee's just giving me a testimonial live. I always come through with the goods.
Always, even from right back early days.
Wow.
Even when you were grumpy.
Very good. So it went from engineering, and I think from memory that business shut down. Yeah, it folded over, as happened so many times in our game.
Yes, it does. Yeah. So the writing was on the wall sort of a couple of months before it officially happened. So I put the feelers out and started looking, and from there thought, well, I've got this sort of engineering construction sort of background now that I've had for a year, and applied for this admin reception role with a civil construction company. Sorry, they weren't just civil construction; they were building and multidiscipline. And they looked very secure and looked very promising. And I thought, well, I'll go for it and see what happens. And they're obviously happy with me because they offered me the job. So I think I was only temping for a week or maybe two before I started with them. And that was my real step into the industry from there, basically. Yeah. So went from a small engineering team firm, I think we had maybe 20 people, to a massive company. So within our office alone and the staff that we had in SA, it was somewhere between 100 and 150 people. So it was a huge jump for me.
Amazing. How did you handle that transition? Because, I mean, we see this, with our clients all the time, working on projects with hundreds of people and then, having to just work by themselves sometimes. Like, what was that shock to the system like?
Yeah, early days for me, I guess I was working, because I was working solely in the office with an office team, it didn't affect me too much. I did have a lot more people that I had to deal with outside of the office, and obviously trying to engage with those people when you're in an office and they're on site, I found that a little bit challenging. That was different for me because I hadn't experienced that before. So it was.
And that was back in the time before smartphones really emerged. So you didn't have the capabilities of Zoom and things like that where you could do it from your phone.
Or even send me a text message of a docket or things like that. It's like everything was so manual. I had to either physically go get it or they had to physically bring it to me.
There's people listening to this now, like we're showing our age, because there's people going, what do you mean there was no smartphones? What do you mean you couldn't take a photo of something and send it to people?
It was like we had mobile phones, but it was only for ringing. That's all it was good for.
Yeah. And it's not like we really take it for granted just how far technology's come and what it allows us to do in the industry now, like working remotely, like even just doing this, just having this meeting via Zoom, like that was just not a thing. Like you said, we met by me physically coming in and sitting with you and your boss, like we would, and we couldn't do it any other way.
Nope, there was no other way around it. I had to.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So you found yourself with this other, and I think from memory, that multidisciplinary company, they actually got acquired by the bigger sort of national level company. So you've been through a few acquisitions now, which is interesting in itself. Found yourself working for this bigger company. Then you moved on to, and obviously we did a lot of work together there. I was obviously subcontracting to that company, but then you found yourself in another company that was acquiring businesses, and then it itself got swallowed up. And you found yourself on some of the biggest projects in Australia, from an infrastructure point of view. Tell me about those and some of the experiences, things that you see that were amazing. And, I'm sure you cross paths with many amazing women in those roles. So
yeah, definitely. Even from early days when I started on my first projects. My first project experience, I was the only woman. It was just me.
Wow.
And it was out at Olympic Dam. So not only was I working on a project where it was just a male team and me, I was then going into a mining
quintessential blokey bloke territory.
Oh yeah,
right?
It was like pick the female.
Yeah.
I don't think.
What was that like? What was that like? Because I don't think there's probably still quite a few occurrences of, women being in amongst, heavily male populated environments. But I mean, what was that like for you? Because you were quite young back then too.
Yes.
Not that you're old now. Not that you're old now. I just want to say that.
Good save.
Yes.
No, but I was like early 20s. I was
Yeah.
young. And this was, I was thrown in it. I didn't really have anyone say, hey, this is what it's going to be like. Have you thought about,
Yeah,
going to look out for yourself sort of thing. Yeah, I was kind of just thrown in it and got on a plane by myself even. Like I didn't have anyone from work with me. I didn't have anyone that I knew. Yeah, I was eating in the mess hall with everyone else, had my own room like everyone else. I wasn't treated any differently at all. Not that I expected to. But thinking back to it, I'm like, there's probably a few things that were not kosher. I probably should have had someone looking out for me a little bit more just to make sure I was safe.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing. I think that the industry's done has done okay at evolving that now is that, just that really looking after. I mean, we're seeing a lot of stuff with mental health and things like that, particularly in those environments, right? Where you're remotely located, you're isolated from friends and family. It's not, it's better now because you can FaceTime and those sorts of things. But back in those early days, mental health was not spoken about and it took so many lives, so it's really, really sad. I know I saw a bit of that. I mean, before we got online and actually talked about this, we were chatting about, some of the stories and you were like, I've been really lucky and, you don't have any major horror stories or anything like that. So, anybody that's listening, don't be waiting for this crazy horrible story. But that's part of the reason that I wanted to bring you on is like we hear so many stories of terrible things that happen, but I wanted to celebrate you and your journey and how that's been navigated because you haven't there is some really beautiful stories of women out there that have been amazingly successful in the industry and they haven't encountered the male misogynistic crap that does stereotypically go out there. So, don't be scared. It might be a dream run for you, like it has been for you. But also, like you said, let's be mindful of how you can look after yourself. You still want to be smart, and I think that goes for everybody, looking after yourself and that sort of thing. So yeah, how did you deal with that environment?
Yeah, well, it was definitely intimidating. And like I said, I didn't have anyone sort of prep me to say, this is what you're walking into. So I just went in and, realised the sheer amount of men that were around me was intimidating. I was like, wow. But in all honesty, I felt like they were all terrified of me. They didn't know whether to look at me.
I said you're scary. I said you're scary. She may be small, but she be mighty.
Yeah, that's it. Again, I think it's about how you carry yourself and the confidence you have within yourself. And it was quite funny how a lot of blokes didn't even want to make eye contact with me. It's like they were terrified of me. They didn't know what to do. And again, that shows how long ago this was, because I'm sure in the mining industry now there are probably loads of women in that sort of space. Setting. But then, no.
Yeah, and I guess I never really thought about that. Like the shock to their system being in a very male-dominated environment, well, like exclusively male at one point, and then all of a sudden this, tiny early 20-year-old woman rocks up with a feisty little personality who's there to get shit done. Like I can't imagine I kind of can imagine it because I've dealt with you, but so yeah, that's cool. So let's fast forward now because this is the part of the conversation I really want to talk about because you're juggling so many balls now. Like you come back to Adelaide, you got on some major projects here. Yeah. I'll just kind of fast forward the story for everybody else of what I know. And then you're like, yeah, I think I might start my own business as well. Yeah. And then you're like, yeah, that's not enough. I think I might have a baby as well.
Yeah, why not?
And then you're like, now correct me if I've got this out of sync. Did the family business start before your second one?
Yes.
Yes. So then you've gone, okay, we're going to start this family business.
Yep.
which had all sorts of, turmoil in it as well, which we won't go into. And then you're like, yeah, I haven't got enough on my plate. I'm going to have another baby.
I'm going to have another baby too.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So
mental,
I really want to talk about one, the decision-making process or lack thereof, but how you juggled all of that, because I think this is really important. Talking about your story of being a young single girl coming into the construction industry, like we need more girls like that. There's no two ways. But then that evolution into what a lot of women want to do is, not just be this career woman, but be a mother. And you're such an amazing mother. I do want to acknowledge that. But, how do you manage that transition where you can do all the things? Because this is the thing, you have done it.
Yeah, I have. And again, I've been very lucky. I mean,
you look exhausted, beautiful, but exhausted.
Thanks. Yeah. It's just 24/7 exhaustion, really.
Yeah, but just running on adrenaline all the time.
That's it, all the time. Yeah. Again, I mean, going back to when I decided to start my own business, so that stems from, I guess, I'd been in the industry for a long time and was getting quite fatigued and stressed, and I'd done a lot. I'd been pushed myself a lot to do not only things that people wanted me to do, but expected me to. And that was great. But it did get to a point where I was fatigued and my mental health was also taking a toll.
Yeah.
And I took a long, hard look at myself and how I was going, thought, no, something needs to change. I'm not happy. And I'm not particularly happy with how I am as a person and also what I'm doing in the industry and what I'm doing here. It wasn't working for me anymore. There'd been a lot of changes happening within the company as well, which was impacting how I was feeling. So there was external factors as well. But yeah, so basically I started with working on myself, got some help for myself, spoke to a psychologist and started looking at improving what I was eating and things like that as well, and exercising and all that sort of stuff that we know improves our mental health. But with that, I was looking at, right, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay in this industry or am I going to do something different? I guess the big thing for me at the time was, well, I don't want to just drop what I'm doing. It's great money. I need the income. I can't afford to just stop and do something else, but I need to start making some plans to transition to something else. With that, I went and saw a different psychologist who actually specialises in career development, basically. So she loaded me with all sorts of questions about what I'm interested in, what I'm passionate about, things like that, and landed with I'm passionate with the health industry. And so with that, made some plans to start training and doing a diploma in a different industry.
Wow.
So whilst I was still working full-time in construction, I started doing my diploma.
Yeah.
And that was hard to navigate and to juggle as well, but I managed. This was obviously all before children. So this was a big thing is I thought, I do want to have kids one day, but if I want to change the direction of my career direction, then I need to do it now before children. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for me. So I, knuckled down, got it done in 2 years. And then from there, I'd actually been made redundant from my current employer and then started with another big civil construction company on a major road job, which was another thing in my tick box is I wanted to be involved in a major project.
Yeah.
And thought, this is great because I've got the stability there, but also they promoted a lot of work-life balance. And I thought this might be my way to try and get them to be lenient on how much I was working. So not be working for them full-time, working for them part-time. So that way I could start venturing into my other career space on a part-time basis. And again, I was very lucky in the sense that I had a very good manager who was very understanding, but he also knew that I was a hard worker. And at the end of the day, if he needed me to get things done, I would get it done. It didn't matter if I was doing it 5 days a week, 4 days a week, 3 days a week. I would get it done. And that's why he agreed to let me go part-time, even though I was on a major project. And it worked. I told him I was completely capable of doing what he needed me to do on a 4-day basis. And so then I started doing my other line of work 1 day a week, which helped me a lot feel like I had balance in my life. I wasn't just stuck doing.
I was just going to say,
I wasn't particularly enjoying.
Yeah, I was just going to say, did that transition kind of, I guess, because then this is what I talk to people about this all the time, doing stuff that fills their cup and lights them up as well. Actually then transposes into the rest of their life, into the things that they don't want to do as much, but they're able to bring like a higher level of energy. Did you find that for yourself? Like,
I was a lot more efficient and a lot more present when I was at work doing my 4 days versus doing my 5 days, because I had that day a week to, like you said, fill up my cup in another way that, just helped bring balance into my life.
Yeah, the interesting thing I see as well is when we give somebody 5 days to do a set amount of tasks, they'll often take 5 days. When you take a day away and you give them 4 to do the same amount of work, they often become more efficient. And I think this is the case for just about everything. Like even in my life, like if I've got 6 months to move a house, I'll take 6 months. And then in the last,
week,
like tiniest amount of time, it's like, got to do all the things. And I think that's the thing is like, for takeaways from this for the listeners is sometimes you've got to analyze how much time you're giving yourself and, shut it, I guess condense it down a bit. I know Elon Musk has got a famous saying is, set a 10-year goal and then work out how to do it in 12 months. I think that's probably a little bit unrealistic. But what it does is it does shorten up the timeline because there brings this sense of urgency to do it. So I do love that. So you transition to a day and then...
And then with that, I decided, right, now it's time for a baby.
Right. Excellent. So I mean, we didn't really touch on the story about how you met the love of your life, but that was in one of those former businesses. He was in the construction industry.
Yeah. Again, working on a major project together and
the love
friends and then, became more than that.
and this is the funny thing, right? So many people find love in the workplace.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to step that forward and talk about, obviously the babies, but also then how you manage the boundaries around that. Because obviously when you meet and fall in love in the workplace, you start working together, like boundary lines have already been crossed, but then how do you manage them moving forward, right? Like,
okay, good question. It was all fine until everyone else knew about it, I guess.
Yes, of course, it always is.
It always is. I guess the biggest thing was I just try to make sure that in a work sense, I didn't favour him or treat him differently to anyone else. If he needed a PO and someone else needed a PO for a purchase order, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. Most people know.
You know what I mean?
I mean, some people will be thinking it's piss off, but
exactly. I wouldn't immediately drop what I was doing for someone else to accommodate him. You know, it's
How do you go with that now, though? Because, like, I know he's got unrelenting standards and very high expectations that you do drop everything and deal with his shit.
Yes. Yeah. It's different.
How do you manage that now? Because, like, you guys, in that early day, there was probably it was easy to manage the boundaries. But, like, I work with a lot of couples and they struggle with these boundary stuff. And look, I know you guys have had struggles. I know you've been incredibly successful, and I know there's been tension, and you've made, I think that happens for all couples. But how do you manage it now? Like,
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there are
I don't, Adam. I just bash my head against the wall until
That's it.
That's it.
I hang up the phone, I start yelling, and I get it done. No. It depends what it is. I think, we're still learning each other's boundaries.
Yeah.
And it is definitely harder now because it's just our business. There's no one else to fall on to. And if I don't do something for him and he doesn't do something for me, then, that's when tensions start to rise.
Yeah.
I mean, this past week I've been hounding him to do something for me and it's still not done. And then he's called me today and said, I need you to do this, this, and this. I'm like, oh dear now. Okay.
Remember all those things I asked you to do?
Yeah, exactly. And he's assured me I will come home early and I will get it done today.
Good.
I'm like,
good.
Okay,
Do you find that you need to? Do you find that you need to draw the line in the sand between
Sometimes.
I guess work and play a lot? Do you find that it spills over often?
Not often. Not often, surprisingly. I think the kids are actually really good at drawing that line.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think if it wasn't for them, we'd have this spilling over a lot more. Yeah. But because kids have no boundaries, like they are what they are, and if they want something, they want it now. Yeah. It's a good way of cutting that work stuff off straight away. You know what I mean? And for that I'm grateful because otherwise it could be a lot harder. Yeah, even whilst we're in the midst of trying to talk work stuff, our oldest would quite often come and interrupt us, and we go, right, we're going to have to park this. It's time with them, and we'll leave it until later. And that's what we end up having to do. Yeah, which for both of us is a good thing in the sense that sometimes you just need to have that downtime and switch off from work.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's really hard to do that yourself. And that's where the kids are really good at doing that for us, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
I guess the juggling, for me with them and doing stuff for Greg can be difficult sometimes. But he also understands that, you know, if he rings me and needs me to do something, I'll just say, look, I can't right now. The kids need me for X, Y reasons.
And I guess that's one of the advantages.
That's fine. I get that. So,
and I guess that's one of the advantages of having your own business. You've got that flexibility, and that's part of the reason we all do it. I'm going to go a little bit sideways here and ask you a question, because, like, I know Greg has, you know, had his own, you know, battles with burnout and being exhausted. You have too. From the position of a partner, what are some of the symptoms that you have noticed over the years? Because it's cyclic too. Like, we all go through this where we kind of neglect ourselves, and then we kind of get some help or don't get some help, but back off the amount of work or whatever. And then, you know, kind of end up back there. Like, I mean, what do you see, and what's the impact that it has on you? Because I think this is really powerful for a lot of the listeners out there. Yeah,
sure. For me, it starts with, you know, coming home later. And that's not necessarily a case of avoidance. Sometimes it can be. Sometimes it's a case of
because he knows you've asked him a heap of things to do and he hasn't done them. So
he hasn't done that, and he
just stays at the shed and works on the truck.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or he knows in himself that he's not ready to come home because he is stressed, and so he spends extra time at the sheds to decompress first before he comes home. So I guess that's the first little signs that starts happening more and more. You know, Greg, as you know, has never been great at dealing with stress in a healthy way. So there's very obvious signs for me where...
Oh, not just Greg. I can tell you, like myself as well. In the early days, I was terrible at dealing with stress in a healthy way. And I think there's a lot of people out there that you know, are going to benefit from this because they don't deal with stress in a healthy way. And I think that's the key, right, is understanding that you don't. And this is why I kind of went this way, is because understanding that there's, you know, the unhealthy way is not bad if you look at it as a symptom and you just go, okay, this is a little red flag saying we need to start looking closely at what's going on here. But please continue.
That's the thing, I guess, is it's about being people being aware of the way they react to stress, whether it be in a good way, unhealthy way, doesn't matter, is recognizing those signs of stress in yourself. I mean, we all have stress, and I may deal with it in a more healthy way to what Greg does, but still about stopping and recognizing, right, things are not right here. What do I need to change, or what do I need to do to fix things? Going back to him. So obviously not coming home at normal times and staying out later. He, again, start doing some avoidance sort of character things. So even when he does come home, he'd go sort of lock himself away in his shed when he came home and tinker on things, or even just sit there and have a drink and watch telly and not be engaging with me and the kids.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, being there but not being there.
Being there but not being there.
Yeah.
That's right, not being present. Even if he is sitting in the lounge room with me and the kids, he's still not there. His mind is elsewhere, so not being present exactly. Yeah, the unhealthy habits, increasing, like increased drinking and smoking, things like that.
Yeah.
Hanging out with people that are not necessarily helpful in those times as well. There's people in your life that are good for you. And there's other people that are maybe not so good for you, especially.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, right? Because I think when we're in that state where we're so exhausted and that we gravitate towards people that are, I guess, easy, and they won't challenge us on the shit that we're doing, right? Yeah. So we'll naturally gravitate to people that are kind of in that, I guess, that disempowered state, that victim state where they're blaming everything on the world. Yeah. Whereas when you get with the right people and they start saying, hey, this is all completely in your control, you've got choices that you need to make here. Like, they're hard chats, particularly when you're exhausted and you're on the receiving end of it, because when people point this stuff out, you've then got a responsibility to make changes. But when you're oblivious to it or you're ignorant to it, you could kind of blame the world. But
that's right.
That's a really powerful thing that, thank you for sharing that.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. So, I mean, they're probably the obvious signs, I guess. But even things like not talking to his family as much, because again, his family are people that will pick up on it and not only that, but again, will challenge him and say, well, what's going on?
Yeah.
Which
what sort of impact directly does it have on you, his family, the kids? How does it, because this is the thing, right?
Even his business.
Sorry?
Even his business. It impacts his business.
Yeah. So talk to that. How does it, in what way would you say it impacts the business?
Well, going back to what I said before about how I've been hounding him for the last week to do something, that would normally have been done. But things are being put aside and not prioritised, I suppose, because he's prioritising in his little self-destruct mode and focusing on things that don't actually really matter.
Yeah,
not letting go of things. And so with that, it does impact our business because I'm not asking him to do things just for the sake of it. It's because these things need to be done.
So things like the invoicing doesn't get done, money's not collected, that sort of thing. So it affects the bottom line. Plus, I'm assuming it affects relationships with customers, that sort of thing.
Of course.
Because you're not getting back to them. And the staff, oh, geez, I didn't even think about that. But, that's a good one too. Because I guess, he's not showing up at his best self. So, that they start to sense that early on and creates a bit of tension. So
for sure. Yeah.
What about you and the kids? Like, obviously that creates some tension there.
It does. And it makes it harder for me to want to help him in his business when he's like that. Because, my cup from him is not being filled because he's, again, not being present when he's here with me and the kids. And, when he does talk about work, it's all in a very negative manner. And I'm big on, I don't like the negativity.
Yeah.
Because negativity just brings everyone down, and it does impact the kids as well. His negativity in what he's feeling in life and business and whatnot impacts me, and therefore impacts the kids, and the kids start being more anxious or needy and things like that.
It's the interesting thing about kids.
Which makes it harder for me because I have to deal with that.
That's the interesting thing about kids. Like I've it's been said to me, and I say it a fair bit too, the first language kids read is energy.
Yes.
So when he comes home and he's in that grumpy state or whatever, like it has, and like I've done it in my own family, and, my dad's done it, and, all sorts of people do it. They come in and you just go, oh my God, they're in a terrible mood. And you don't even have to speak to them. So the impacts are incredible, but
definitely. Yeah. And I mean, obviously it goes both ways. Greg's obviously feels impacted by me when I'm going through times of stress as well, and the kids do. So there'll be days where if I'm particularly stressed, the kids have been bratty as hell all day, which doesn't improve your stress. He comes home and he's had a good day, so his energy's good. The kids naturally will gravitate towards him and want nothing to do with me. Again, it's like you said, they naturally pick up on that and those energy levels. And and again, that affects Greg as well, not just in business. He never wants to ask me to do anything relating to business when I'm stressed.
Thanks for sharing all of that. Like, I didn't want to make this a show about men, but I think what's really important here is to highlight the shit that you ladies put up with on the back of us being gooses and not getting help and those sorts of things. But I do want to circle back to you and how you manage all of this now. Like, how do you look after yourself? How do you juggle all the balls, the boys, the businesses, yourself?
Yeah.
And life.
And life. Yeah. There are days where I go, today just feels hopeless. Like, I'm not going to bother trying today. I just can't be bothered trying today. And that's not a bad thing, because when I do have those days, my kids get the best of me. Yeah. Because I'm just engrossed with them and what they want to do, and everything else gets put on the back burner. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, because like I said, they actually get the best of me when I'm in that. I think that's important for everyone.
That's a really good point, because it's about giving yourself permission to just go, you know what, today's a write-off. Yeah. I'm just going to take the time. I'm going to go and do things that bring me joy, which for you is spending time with your kids. Yep. That's cool. What else?
Yeah. I do consciously make an effort to make sure I go get some self-care, whether that be I go get a massage, I go have a curry, I go have acupuncture, or even I just take myself out to lunch occasionally.
Yeah, nice.
I do that. I just go, you know what? I don't have any kids. I don't have any clients. I don't really need to do anything pressing right now. I'm going to go out for lunch and just have lunch by myself. It's not like I'm doing that all the time. But, when there's times where it's been full on and I have that time to myself, I go, that's my time. And you got to cut out some of your time, because otherwise if you don't, you get into that burnout stage. Yeah. And as a consequence, everything starts to suffer. It's your relationships, it's your business, it's everything. So, and I feel like because Greg's not so great at it, if I don't look after myself and try to keep myself level-headed and okay, then things would fall apart very quickly. Yeah. One of us needs to be in a good space to deal with things when things are not so great, or when the other person's not so great, I guess.
Yeah. Amazing. I think that's an amazing place to wrap it up, because that's such an important point. Like, I talk about it in the example of the oxygen mask, on an airplane. You've got to put yours on first to be the best for everybody else, and this counterintuitive thing that happens, particularly with mums, but parents generally, is they tend to put everybody and everything else first. And then they find they're working from an empty cup. And I think that's really a really challenging place to work from. But Ash, I just want to say thank you so much for being part of today's show. I feel like we could talk for another, 4 hours about this stuff. But I think, to summarize, such an amazing journey, but the way that you handle everything that's going on. And, I really want, your journey to inspire other women to come into the industry and know that they can do all the things that can be done. Yes, it is a juggle, but it can be done. You can build your own businesses that are outside of the industry. You can support your partners and their dreams. But I think ultimately the message is you have to look after yourself in the process, but also in amongst that, you're looking after your partner as well, seeing those symptoms of how they're, I guess, inadvertently destroying themselves. So, if there's anybody out there that's seeing those symptoms in their partner, husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, it doesn't matter, because it does show up. You said you've been through your own battles with burnout. So I've seen that in plenty of women over the years. Please reach out to us at hello@tradiebusinessschool.com. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe. Make sure you share it with maybe an amazing woman out there just like Ashlee and say, hey, this could be you. and maybe you'll be the next guest on the podcast. But Ash, thanks once again. It's been amazing having you, and maybe we'll get you back one day.
Yeah, sure. It was great. It was good fun. Thanks so much.
You're most welcome.